Strongest economy in the world. Our inflation rates are lower than other nations in the world. The one thing that has been destabilizing is the outrageous behavior of the Supreme Court of the United States on overruling not only Roe v. Wade, but essentially challenging the right to privacy. We've been a leader in the world in terms of personal rights and privacy rights, and it is a mistake, in my view, for the Supreme Court to do what it did. I can understand why the American people are frustrated because of what the Supreme Court did. I can understand why the American people are frustrated because of inflation.
Truth, we got to remind you, Joe wasn't a leader in civil rights because Joe partnered with a former Klansman named Robert Byrd and tried to stop the integration of public schools. He didn't want the schools, in his words, to become racial jungles. So let's help educate Joe Biden because he's deeply confused, as everybody knows. Every single other country in the G7 has a lower inflation rate than our country, the USA. In fact, almost every single country in the developed world has a lower rate, including Canada, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, Saudi Arabia, and I can keep going. And by the way, for Joe to attack one of America's greatest institutions, the U.S. Supreme Court, while on foreign soil, that's pretty low even for Joe. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Joe Biden himself, because he said it in 2017. Take a listen.
What worries me most, and I never thought I'd have to make this speech or want to make this speech, the almost drumbeat of denigration of the institutional structures that govern us is dangerous. When you delegitimize the courts, you delegitimize the legislative body.
It does raise a lot.
Real in America, and it has always been. Xenophobia is real in America and always has been. Sexism, too.
We should not be relying on a history filled with racism and sexism and homophobia to determine our fundamental rights today.
Original sin of slavery weaved white supremacy into our founding documents and principles.
What a horrible.
Top domestic violent extremist threat comes from racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists.
I want to understand white rage, and I'm white.
White supremacy is a poison. It's a poison running through it. It really is. Our body politic. And it's been allowed to.
He's talking about half the country right there. Now, how do they feel about our being an independent country? Oh my God. Okay, let me define rules-based international order for you. They're vague rules that exist only to restrain and weaken the United States and then empower countries that enjoy free riding off of us, or China. The rules never apply to China, which would never dream of doing anything against its own self-interest. Forget about it. Now, remember, the Biden administration doesn't go overseas to defend American interests. Oh, no. They engage in multilateral talks to advance global interests. American interests don't even come second or third in Biden world. Why should we be trusted to make our own policies or even, frankly, even choose our own leaders? We should have to live under international norms drafted by bureaucrats in Europe. The EU, they should run our domestic policy, our climate agenda, our foreign policy, and of course they should decide all hot-button cultural issues. And we know what they think.
Clearly, it has massive impacts on people's thinking around the world. It's a very important decision. I've got to tell you, I think it's a big step backwards. I think it's a big step backwards.
Of course, Biden, rather than stand up for our Constitution and defend our system, even when he disagrees with some court rulings, he piled on. Whoa. I'm confused. I thought that the one thing destabilizing the world was President Putin in Ukraine. Now, of course, Biden never talks about President Xi's forced enslavement of millions of Chinese or the extermination of God knows how many dissidents in China. Biden never speaks about how destabilizing it is when China threatens Taiwan. Nah, it's potatoes, small potatoes. Instead, we saw Joe Biden standing in Madrid telling the world that what is truly destabilizing is that some women in states like Mississippi can't get more abortions. Talk outrageous behavior.
It's fair to expect American drivers and drivers around the world to pay that premium for this war.
As long as it takes. So Russia cannot, in fact, defeat Ukraine and move beyond Ukraine.